The Saints have finally made it official with wide receiver and returner Rasheed Shaheed. As we all know, the Saints' future doesn't look the best given their cap space, investments in bad draft picks and players and contracts, and just the general age of the team. They're statistically one of the oldest, if not the oldest, roster in the NFL. Guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Tyrann Mathieu, and Andres P are still important parts, or at least they were important parts to this team, because the Saints failed to find good players in the draft and eventually beat their replacements. So now the Saints are stuck paying these older players in the NFL. And while not all of them are completely washed and bad, some of them you can definitely tell that there's a decrease in their play. And because of the investments the Saints have in these contracts in these older players, it's hard for the Saints to move on from them, especially guys like Cam Jordan who are meant to be Saints for life. And like I said, while majority of these players have once been great in their careers for the Saints, they are no longer in their primes, and the Saints need to start gradually and slowly finding the replacements now, because they failed to do that over the past few seasons. And that's simply because the Saints failed to draft good players and get young talent while these guys were in their primes to eventually replace them. The Saints draft picks over the years, they've missed on quite a bit, and it's caused them to be in this hole that they're in with cap space, older players, and just not winning enough games in the past 3 seasons. They gave up 2 first-round picks for Marcus Davenport in 2018, 2 first-round picks for Trevor Penning as well, a first-round pick invested in Peyton Turner. They missed basically the entire 2018 and 2020 draft, aside from maybe one player in Cesar Ruiz, and in 2019 Eric McCoy was the only good pick. So from 2018 to 2020 the Saints drafted 2 good players in Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz, who are young and competing and helping the Saints compete, and that's just not good enough. Especially in today's NFL, you gotta have young talent, and the Saints simply don't have that. But as of late, the team has done a much better job at drafting and getting young players in the draft, hitting on their draft picks, not only in the first round, but in the later rounds. Getting guys like Chris Olave, A.T. Perry, Alontae Taylor, Brian Brzee, Howden, Kendre Miller, Paulson Adebo, and Pete Warner are all good young players to build a foundation for the future of the Saints. And that's exactly what the Saints need. They need young players to build for the future, instead of relying on guys who once were in their prime, maybe 5-ish years ago. But one guy in that list who we didn't name might have one of the biggest contributions to the Saints' future, and he wasn't even drafted. I'm talking about wide receiver, All-Pro and Pro Bowler returner Rasheed Shaheed, who went undrafted in 2022 after tearing his ACL in the final game of his college career. And that injury to Rasheed Shaheed would prevent him from going to the combine, doing the pro days, and probably prevented him from being drafted, and it lucked out for the Saints. Shaheed would spend most of his first offseason in the NFL during minicamp, OTAs, training camp, rehabbing, and getting back to full health, and would start his NFL career on the practice squad after getting back to 100%. But soon enough he would get his chance due to injuries to Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Jarvis Landry. By week 6 of the NFL season, Rasheed Shaheed would get his first opportunity to play in his first NFL game in the 2022 season, and he immediately left his mark and made his name known by scoring a touchdown on not only his first touch in the NFL, but his second touch, and he would never look back again. Rasheed Shaheed would finish his rookie season showcasing his skills and his speed, and had the fanbase excited for year 2 for the young, undrafted wide receiver, as he was one of the few bright spots in the 2022 season. Going into year 2, Rasheed Shaheed would have his first full offseason healthy going into year 2. He wasn't coming off an injury. He would be able to participate in OTAs, minicamp, and training camp, which was huge considering the Saints had just signed quarterback Derek Carr, and he needed to build chemistry with the new quarterback for the Saints. Year 2 did get off to a rough start for Rasheed Shaheed, as he spent most of the end of training camp and early of preseason injured, and didn't really play any snaps during the preseason, only just did a few warm-ups. Not only was his injury unfortunate for Rasheed Shaheed and would be part of the bad start to 2023 and his second year, but he would fumble on the first play of the regular season on a kickoff return. But that mistake wouldn't hold him back from having a good second season, and he bounced back from it right away, catching a huge crucial pass later on in that game. And so Rasheed Shaheed's first full season and his second season in the NFL was quite a good one. He showcased that he was more than just a deep threat big play guy, but someone who could be reliable in important situations and make plays all over the field, short, medium, deep. He could even use jet sweeps to get him involved in the backfield. And of course, he showcased his kick return talents as he was selected to a Pro Bowl and first team All-Pro as a returner. And now that it's the offseason and we're nearly days away from the new league year starting and free agency, the Saints had to make a decision on which players to bring back and let go. And with that came a decision on wide receiver Rasheed Shaheed, who needed to be tendered so he could return to the team in 2024. For those of you who don't know what this means, given that Rasheed Shaheed was an undrafted free agent, he can't negotiate contracts for a long-term deal until year 3 because he is an exclusive rights free agent. So Rasheed Shaheed's contract is significantly different compared to, say, Chris Olave's, who was drafted in the first round. Chris Olave and his agent have more rights and more opportunities to start negotiating for a long-term contract much sooner than Rasheed Shaheed can. As for what an exclusive rights free agent is, so if a team wants to keep their exclusive rights free agent, they have to put a tender on them and basically keeps them on the team for one more season for a low price unless they choose to sit out. So in Rasheed Shaheed's case, the Saints basically put a tender on Rasheed Shaheed, which is a 1-year $950,000 deal, and Rasheed Shaheed has no voice and no choice as to what he wants. He either has to play on this contract or sit out for a season, which I don't see him doing. So what this means is Rasheed Shaheed will be back on the Saints in 2024 on a 1-year $950,000 deal. That's basically what that means. That's what the tender is. And considering he was just elected to his first Pro Bowl and first team All-Pro, I'd say that is a huge steal for the Saints. But it won't be for long, as next offseason is the time frame as to when the Saints will have to get a long-term deal done with the receiver. And that process could get started now and sooner rather than later, which is ideal. But I don't see that being the case, as Rasheed Shaheed has one of the better agents in Drew Rosenhaus around the NFL, and for Rasheed Shaheed, his best interest would be to wait and increase his value to get a bigger contract next offseason. If he was to sign a contract today, he'd probably get a lot less money and less years on that contract than if he signed it a year from today, given that something drastic happens. Now the Saints could place yet another tender on Rasheed Shaheed next offseason as well, but to maintain a good relationship with Rasheed Shaheed, it's probably better for both sides to get a deal done so there isn't any frustrations between the two sides going into the 2025 season. So on top of paying a lot of older players, next offseason the Saints will have a lot of hard decisions to make regarding their young talented players. They'll have to start having negotiations and talks about who they want to bring back between Rasheed Shaheed, Chris Olave, Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, and Pete Werner. But we don't need to worry about that until next offseason. But going into the 2024 year, Rasheed Shaheed is set to have his best one yet. Now that he and quarterback Derek Carr have a year under their belt of chemistry building and team bonding, they are ready to build upon that. And now they have new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, who should be able to get the best out of Rasheed Shaheed and the rest of the offense compared to the way the offense was being ran by former offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. Offense should operate a lot smoother in 2024 compared to how it was the last few seasons, given the young talent in the skill position groups for the Saints in Kendre Miller, A.T. Perry, Chris Olave, and Rasheed Shaheed. But the Saints will have to add some talent to the offensive line and maybe some of the skill position groups as well, especially the receiving group, because the Saints only have 3 receivers on the roster right now in A.T. Perry, Chris Olave, and Rasheed Shaheed. Everyone else is a free agent, and Michael Thomas is set to go sign with another team this offseason. Adding players in free agency or the draft who can make contested catches and get yards after the catch to fit this new system would be ideal, especially now that the Saints won't have Michael Thomas. They need someone to make those tough physical catches over the middle, and we haven't seen enough from A.T. Perry to be comfortable with him coming into the season as the only contested catch guy. But adding talent in the receiving room will be hard to do considering the limited amount of draft picks the Saints have and the limited amount of money the Saints are going to spend in free agency. Adding talented depth wide receivers while also addressing the needs of offensive line, defensive line, safety, linebacker, maybe running back, and tight end will be hard. Where will the Saints spend their resources? Will the Saints draft a receiver? Spend money on a receiver? Who knows? And right now the Saints only have 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, and the comp picks were announced just a day ago, and the Saints were awarded 3 5th-round picks. So they have a total of 9 picks, but 7 of them are in the 5th round and beyond. That is not good. If the Saints are going to add better talent in the draft, they need to find a way to get more picks in the middle so they can fill out the roster and get good players. Trading back from the 1st and 2nd round to get more picks would be ideal, or you could also trade up with the 5th round picks and use them all in a package deal. But the issue with one of those scenarios is that the Saints simply just don't trade back. With limited draft picks and limited money to get talent on the team, it'll be hard for the Saints to get this roster comfortable and to a spot where they're ready to compete for a playoff spot. but that won't stop the Saints from going all in. If you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. It's going to be a hectic offseason for the Saints. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.